Welcome to the Personal Myth-Making Podcast, where women and non-binary folk talk about their relationships to their creativity, their bodies, and their favorite ancient tale, like, for example, fairy tale, myth, or folklore. These are conversations with people of wildly different backgrounds, people who are generous enough to share their lives and get personal with me. And we start our conversations by orienting in place and space, sharing where we are in the world and whose Indigenous land we're on, and then I get our guests to be a storyteller and tell their chosen ancient tale to us. We get to soak up what these ancient tales have to offer us: soul restoration and wisdom, medicine, delight, and tragedy all intermingled, and then we get into it, the meat of why our guests chose that particular story, how their creativity works for them, and how they relate to their bodies. The conversations unspool from there, and I promise you they're rich, deep, and wonderful. My name is Janelle Hardy, and I'm the creator and teacher of a transformational online memoir writing course called The Art of Personal Myth-Making, which means I'm interested in all things writing life story memoir, fairy tales, anthropology, healing, creativity, and embodiment. If you're here listening, whether you're new or returning, I know you're a person that cares deeply. You're someone that wants a connection to meaning, someone who feels the interconnections of the earth, mind, body, and humanity, and you're someone seeking kindred spirits. You'll find all of that here. And for that reason, nothing gives me more pleasure than to share these conversations with you. It's episode 69, and I'm chatting with Reverend Sheree Taylor-Jones, a New Thought minister ordained in both unity and religious science. Reverend Sheree believes universal principles are a necessity to create a world where every sentient being thrives, and she believes that as a metaphysical practitioner, she is called to be a catalyst of great change, to embrace each person as worthy and welcomed. With this ethos in mind, she created an experiential inclusivity training program and is a qualified transitional minister through the Interim Ministry Network. We had a wide-ranging conversation about boldness and cleverness and surprising people by what you bring to the table. Sheree discussed how she gets categorized as a woman of color and of having been a high-end overachiever, always trying to prove herself as a coping strategy. She shares how this anxiety-filled state has shifted and become an exhalation into showing up in the joy of being herself, and how that changes so much. We also talked about being a large-framed diva woman, being put on a diet as a 5-year-old, and after a long time of being at war with her body, being at peace. She illustrates the long journey from being in resistance to acceptance and allowing herself to be a human in error as well as a human in excellence, of being the mouse in her chosen story, which you'll hear soon. She talks about what it was like to write a book and shares some tips and tricks to getting it done. Reverend Sheree also possesses an extensive corporate background with over 15 years in consulting and training, specializing in strategic planning, communication skills, conflict resolution, leadership skills, and organizational development, and she's also a certified pastoral counselor from St. John's University in Nottingham, UK. Her newly published book on Amazon.com is entitled Turn Your Why into Why Not, and it's about helping others change outdated belief systems which no longer serve them. Currently, she travels with her husband and 2 chihuahuas throughout the United States in their motorhome, guest speaking and lecturing, and she's an executive board member of the affiliated New Thought Network, ANTN. We recorded this conversation just before the seriousness of the coronavirus pandemic settled into North America, and so I'm not sure where and how she's traveling about in her motorhome right now, but I feel like our conversation will be a really lovely respite from whatever state of self-isolation or illness or shelter at home you are currently in. So I really hope you enjoy. Reverend Sheree's perspective is so wise and delightful. Enjoy our ramble through the Aesop's fable, The Lion and the Mouse, as well as Sheree's relationship with her body and creativity. The Personal Mythmaking podcast is brought to you by The Art of Personal Mythmaking, an online transformational memoir writing course. You'd like to work through painful memories and heal and grow, but every time you try to work with your life challenges, you feel overwhelmed and shaky, and your heart beats faster and faster until you do something, anything, to distract yourself. Help is available. Calm and settle your nervous system with gentle, easy-to-implement guidance and writing tips so you can stop feeling overwhelmed by the more difficult parts of your life story. Download 10 gentle yet effective ways to heal using your body and writing at personalmythmaking.com/memories. Hi, Sheree. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing excellent. Really glad to be on your show. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Yes, I'm excited to see where our conversation goes. So I always like to start out by orienting us in place and space, because with the magic capabilities of technology, we can have conversations with people all over the world, but we're still human beings and human bodies living on Earth. And I just find it fascinating so I'll just share where I am first, and then I'll get you to describe a bit about where you are. I'm living in a small town called Vernon in the Okanagan Valley of BC, Canada. The Okanagan Valley is very well known for being the Napa of the North, having a ton of amazing wineries and fruit trees and lots of lakes and really hot weather in the summer. And the area in and around Vernon is the traditional territory of the Syilx people. So that's traditional and unceded territory, which is important to note. It was never given over to the Canadian government.
Interesting.
So I would love to know where in the world you are, whose land you're on, and what it looks like where you are.
Well, it's really interesting that your location is called the Napa of the North, because I'm in the Napa of the South.
Oh, that's too funny.
So that is just quite synchronistic. I'll take that. So I'm in Napa, and this is the area of the Wapo people, and they got that name when they were seen as very brave warriors against the Mexican when they were coming in, and they were known as quite docile people, very harmonious living, until they were fighting for their land, and then that's how they received that name as the Wapo people. So it was really interesting to do the research on that. So thank you for that incentive.
Yeah, thanks. And so Napa of the Napa of the South, the Napa, the real Napa. What does the landscape look like?
It is surrounded by rolling hills, lots of vineyards. We took a drive yesterday, and it's just winery after winery after winery. And yeah, I'm going to say I love wine. I mean, that's my go-to tipple if I do have a tipple. And so I just felt like this little kid looking at all of the places where the wine actually comes from, the ground and the oak barrels that it's fermented in and things of that nature. So it was just this little taste of history and a slice of heaven here. It's just starting to be spring. So right now, most of the vines are just starting to have little buds on them. And it's off season here, so it's really nice. It's not too busy.
Oh, that sounds really lovely. So my next question is, what is your favorite ancient tale?
Yeah, I got to really think about that. And I love a lot of Aesop's fables, which comes from the time of ancient Greece. And the one that I fell in love with is The Lion and the Mouse.
The Lion and the Mouse.
Heard of that? The Lion and the Mouse.
That's ringing a vague bell, but I'm excited to have you tell it. So once you're ready, please
Okay,
do become a storyteller and just tell us, myself, and our listeners the story.
sure. So there was this very inquisitive mouse who saw this lion taking a nap. And for some reason, they thought to themselves, I could like scurry around on the lion while he's sleeping. So he does this, and then of course the lion awakens with the mouse running across his face. And the lion rises up angrily and grabs him, and he's about to kill him when the mouse entreats, saying, if you would only spare my life, I would be sure to repay your kindness. Well, the lion thinks this is quite absurd, gives a good guffaw, and just, releases the little mouse. A few days later, what happens is that the lion is captured by some hunters, and the mouse hears this wild roar from the lion, and it recognizes that's the same lion. And so he rushes over to the lion and realizes that it's a particular rope that's holding all of the caging of the lion together. And he gnaws on it and frees the lion. And as he frees the lion, he says, you ridiculed the idea of my ever being able to help you, not expecting to receive from me any repayment of your favor. Now you know that it is possible for even a mouse to confer benefits on a lion. End of story.
Oh, that was lovely.
Thank you. It just has so many rich layers to it.
So tell me about the layers that speak to you.
What speaks to me is the beliefs that we have, that what strength and power looks like, and who would be a predator, who would be in power to help, and who would not be in power to help, and how even the smallest being can make a change in someone's life. So I really like it because it looks at what do we really believe? What assumptions are we under?
And how does the story speak to you personally?
Well, I always see myself, of course, as the underdog. I'm one of those. So for me, it resonates because I think of all the gifts that I bring to my friendships, to my relationships, to coworkers and colleagues, and how often I get to be, I think I usually surprise people by what I bring to the table. There's just this, I think people like me, I think I'm well received, but just as we look at labels, we look at categories that we put people into, and I think as a woman of color, I always get categorized. And so it's really interesting that I get to bring the allness that is me to the table. And often it's quite life-changing for people that I interact with.
How do you get categorized as a woman of color?
I get categorized as not as valuable as the norm. I should say, what is that term that I'm looking for? The dominant narrative. So having less value, less insight perhaps. Maybe not as savvy or intelligent. So I think those are some of the categories that I face dealing with.
That's pretty shitty.
It's life. So I can go about as I used to when I was in my 20s with this chip on my shoulder, and I'll show you and I'll outdo to the detriment really of myself, because I was really trying to be this high-end overachiever, always proving myself.
Mm-hmm.
And now my viewpoint is more to the point of, I know what my gifts are. I know the divine human being that I am on this planet and my purpose. And hopefully you'll be able to see that. And if you aren't, you get to lose out on all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so for me, that's a really wonderful way of showing up in the world now. So I show up, enjoy doing what I'm doing, being happy in what I'm doing, and allowing you to be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully by having some interactions with me, you get to look at some of your unconscious biases.
Mm-hmm.
Or not. The choice is yours, right? Or each individual that I connect with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. So as you're describing this, the lion and the mouse becomes even more clear.
Yes.
Yeah. There's something you said, hang on. I'm curious, the dynamic of shifting from being a high end overachiever trying to always prove yourself, the shift from that state in yourself into just showing up as you are, and rather than trying to prove yourself, showing up as the gift of being yourself. How did that shift work for you?
For me, it's a level of exhalation that I don't think I had before. I think walking through the world the way that I was previously, or the way that I perceived the world previously, was filled with anxiety and some fear of, what is this interaction going to be like with this person today?
Mm-hmm.
And now, from the perspective of how I'm looking at the world, I start off with the joy of just me showing up, which most often becomes infectious with the people that I'm intertwining with. So it's really this, when I'm able to come up from being within and kind of look from above, it's this self-fulfilling prophecy at times, is it not? The way that we see the world is the way that the world sees us. So, so my earlier incarnation of having to prove myself all the time created this need to always be seen by people having to prove myself.
Right, yeah.
So it's just it's crazy what we do. And then now I'm just having the time of my life, doing what I want to do, and come along with me if you choose to. And if you don't, then you've got another path, and that's okay too. As opposed to being in judgment, standing in judgment of what is, I think, morally right or wrong.
I just need to pause at that. It sounds very liberating.
Yeah, it's freedom. I call it freedom. And, this is not something that's happened overnight. This has taken a long journey, to get here, to the journey from being in resistance and standing up for rights to being in accepting of what is and just showing up as the gift that I am in the world. That's a big shift.
Yeah.
And that's for eons, it feels like. But it's nice to be on this side, finally.
Yeah. I don't think I'm quite there yet myself, but moving in that direction, it's really inspiring to hear from you. Being in acceptance and joy rather than resistance and striving.
Yes. And it's a day-to-day. Hear this. I've not arrived, my friend. No. it's a day-to-day choice. You know, each day I wake up and there's a choice to make.
Yeah.
Am I in acceptance today, or am I going to be in resistance today?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to be in love with myself today, or am I going to be in judgment of myself today? You know,
Right.
and sometimes the love and joy does not win out on that day, you know?
Yeah.
And I give myself permission the next day to go, all right, well, we can start again today, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and know that this is an ongoing process, and allow myself to be human, to be in error, to be
Mm.
making mistakes, to fail, to be in excellence, to be grouchy some days. All of that is
Mm-hmm.
part of the human condition.
Yeah. Um, I love how in The Lion and the Mouse, it's such a short story, but there really is a lot to it. The way the mouse is zipping about, eh, there's so much confidence and audaciousness in the mouse,
Yes.
despite this enormous lion skepticism. The mouse just knows that it can figure the thing out. It can save the lion. It can.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite exciting and thrilling. I think sometimes the underdog perspective uh, doesn't have that much confidence and audaciousness in it, or there's audaciousness, but a sense of struggle is a really big part of the story, which is in this fable.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be in this fable, which is, I think, part of the other reason why I'm enamored by it, because it's just the mouse being the mouse.
Mm-hmm.
And that mouse is not seeing itself as the underdog.
Right. Yes.
There's a self-perception. The mouse
Yeah.
is seeing itself as capable, and I'm a mouse, I scurry, I want to check things out, you know, risk a little, go on the
Mm-hmm.
edge, see what's what, and still be able to maneuver out of something that's really life-threatening and dangerous in not a battle for, but let me tell you what I'm going to be able to do for you. I know this. I know you're going to need me. I like that mouse. You
Mm-hmm.
know, can't we all show up as that mouse? Woohoo! That'd
Yeah.
be a great world.
Yeah. I'm thinking about humans, and I think like age 3 and 4 really embodies the mouse energy.
There is that fearlessness, isn't there?
and
Yes,
and utter groundedness in self, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
The world is there, and everything that they do is acceptable and wonderful.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is so rich. But I'm gonna switch to my next question, which is
Okay, okay.
what is your relationship with your creativity like?
I thought I was not creative for a really long time.
Hmm.
I think it's because the education system that I went through, if you're smart, you can't be creative. It's an either or situation when I was growing up. And because I was bright, I was geared very much towards the sciences and math and things of that nature. So it really wasn't until probably in the last 10 to 15 years that I realized I'm really creative. And prior to that, I would just be like, oh no, I can't do that. You know, I just don't have that gene. But I've realized I'm quite creative. So there's a childlike enthusiasm when I'm in creativity. There's like, I kind of can't sit still. There's a bubbling that happens. I get the goofy smile on my face. And there's this richness of possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
I recently wrote a book, and I really, if you had asked me 10 years ago, could you do this, or 5 years ago, I would have been like, absolutely not. That's someone else's, you know, gift. And when I was writing, there was this sense of, yes, I'm bringing something out to the table, but I also felt just inspired and guided at the same time. There was this level of allowing, like I didn't have to get it right. It didn't have to be perfect. It didn't have to look a certain way. And so each day for me, it would be, here's my commitment. My commitment is 1,000 words today.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sit and I would just start typing. And I felt a lot of times like a download was coming through, which was kind of cool. And most of the time, it was just me getting out of my way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, me getting out of the thoughts, me getting out of the judgments of what a great author looks like or should be like, or what the writing will be like, you know, the next Ernest Hemingway or something.
Yeah.
But once I was able to release that and just say, here's my commitment, 1,000 words a day, and I just type. No editing, no grammar,
Mm-hmm.
just typing. It was consuming. It was consuming and wonderful.
Mm. And so with 1,000 words a day, how long did it take for you to write your book?
I would say close to a year, probably a little shorter than a year, but close to a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And around how many hours per day did those 1,000 words take?
On a good day, a couple of hours. On a not so great day, all day long.
Yeah. Yeah, it varies, doesn't it? And I'm asking these questions especially out of interest because I teach memoir writing. So for any of my listeners that are my students, I love being able to get some tangible insights from my guests who've done something like this. And that's the thing. Sometimes it flows and sometimes it doesn't. The same goal can expand and contract, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think for me, it's so easy to torture myself and say, I don't have anything else to say. As long as I did not label what I was doing as good, bad, writer's block, not good enough, I don't have anything else to say, as long as I was able to release that, what I realized then, I could be in the flow. And those 1,000 words would turn into 2,000 words, 3,000 words at a shot. And then what that does also is the days that I'm sitting there and it's like, I've got 50 words and nothing else is happening, I can say, all right, well, you had the intention. Give yourself a break. See you tomorrow. Freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom in
Yeah, you're describing a creative process that has a lot of ease to it and acceptance.
Yeah, I think for me, if it wasn't that, then there wouldn't be the joy, the wanting to, the passion to.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I had a deadline or someone hovering over here saying, you know, how it should look, or, you know, here's our deadline and time frame, I'm not sure I would have enjoyed what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably would still be writing the book. Hello?
Okay, so I am curious because you said that you didn't understand that you were creative for a long time, and then you recently wrote a book. So the shift from discovering that you are creative, which I believe everyone is, we just have this creative life force in us, but unfortunately we get educated out of it for a variety of reasons. And then diving into an enormous project like writing a book. What was the catalyst?
The catalyst was, I've been told no. What? So I'm a minister for about the last 4 years. And in my mind, this is what a minister looks like. They would have their pulpit. It would be a decent sized community, and you know, everything is geared around that. And I believe I'm pretty intuitive and an empath. And so I got guidance that it was time for me to leave my flock. And I was like, no, I'm only here 2 years. It's too soon. And I kept hearing, you've done what you need to do with this community. It's time to leave. So I got that. But see, in my human understanding of it's time to leave, I thought as soon as I said, okay, I'm leaving, I would know the next thing was going to be right there for me to say yes to. And that was not the case. I tried quite a number of things. I thought maybe I needed to go to a different style of community, and everything just kept being no. And it's one of those moments where you question, what am I here to do? I'm here for a purpose. What is it? And then I kept hearing, you need to write. And I'm like, no, that's not mine to do. And I started off with, you need to write about your journey, because as I told you before we started, my husband and I are now driving a motorhome. We sold our home and we're driving across North America. And we started off in Florida, and we're now in California. And I heard, you need to write about your journey. What are the lessons you're learning on this trip? So I started there. 2 weeks later, a colleague of mine calls and she said, I thought about you and I'm pitching for this spiritual magazine. And I wondered if you'd be interested in writing about your spiritual journey as your RVA. And I thought, oh, all right, I'm on the right path here. But I still thought it was going to be short articles, and that was going to be how I did my creativity. And it didn't, after that article, there was nothing. I was in the wilderness, and I kept hearing, you need to write a book. And I just started writing again, and that's kind of how I got here. Very circuitous, I might add.
Well, I'm a fan of the upside down and backwards journey.
Well, I know it well.
Okay, so a lot of listening to that inner guidance, or I don't know if inner guidance is the right word for you, but the intuitive knowings, perhaps?
Yes.
Are there any other avenues of creativity that you enjoy?
There are. I'm big on music. I love to sing, but that one I haven't been able to break through the I'm not good enough yet. I say yet. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm more attracted to the artsy things now. It's that the life of gray, the unknown, the uncertainty, the impermanence of life, it grabs me. And for me, that's where that evolution of consciousness happens. So I think, through most of my schooling, it's been I've been geared towards engineering. So very, here's the formula, here's how life looks, this is what you're supposed to do. And so I'm on the antithesis of that as I'm living my life.
That's funny. From very linear and structured to...
Correct. And I think this is really the reality of life. There is nothing permanent. There is nothing certain. And when we try to create these structures, I think we're seeing that the structures are imploding and no longer working the way that they were possibly designed with all good intentions to work, because life is so changeable. And what I'm finding strength in is the impermanence, the changes, the possibilities, and not being terrified of them any longer. Where structure before was my be all and end all. If it wasn't structured and I didn't have it planned out, life was going to be very chaotic for me. And now I'm dancing around with what's next, whatever's coming into my view.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Yeah. So my last question is, what is your relationship with your body like?
Now it's peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't always been that way. I am overweight, a large framed diva woman, and for much of my life I have been shamed around that. Recently I looked at a picture of me when I was probably about 5, and why that number is so significant to me is that's when I was told I was on a diet for the first time in my life, 5 years old. And I saw a picture. I had visited home, and I got a picture, and I saw the picture of me of like when I was told I needed to go on a diet. And I looked at it, and I was so surprised at how normal I looked, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So for a very, very long time, I have been at war with my body, not pleased by the size, not fitting into what normal looks like in our culture. And today, I'm at peace with it. There are moments where I talk to different body parts, and I'll say, like to my feet, thank you for being able to carry me and taking me places so I can see like all these amazing things. Sometimes my knees hurt, and I go, you guys have been really doing an amazing job. You've been working. I hear that you're a little sore. I'm going to take some extra care today to take care of you. So things like that I'm doing a lot more frequently, and what that does is it creates this loving relationship with my body. And I still hear the negative thoughts that I've been indoctrinated with, for lack of a better term, but it is an indoctrination. And I hear that, and instead of going down that groove that's in my brain, I now short circuit it, and I go, yeah, I get that's what you've been told, but you're amazing. Let me tell you what's so amazing about your body, or my body. So there is acceptance, there is love, there is always room for improvement because I'm always thinking, well, I could do, but for the most part, I'm taking up space. Like I was always hunched over and, trying to make myself smaller and not taking up space. And I take up space now, and it feels good. It feels good to say, I deserve to have some space and take it. There's a sense of worthiness, that my body is worthy to be here and to take up some room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true that how we live in our body, whether it's hunched over or standing tall, taking up space or shrinking, has so much to do with our ideas about
Yes.
worth and our ideas. Also our relationship with attention. Yeah.
And I also think it has a lot to do with what we're told a perfect female specimen is. Like my heritage is multifaceted. So like, for example, I was born in England. I have mixed heritage, white, color, Indian, so for me, there's this, the British culture is very much in what's ladylike, what's appropriate, how a lady should handle herself. And, my upbringing is not to be loud, demure, to, all of those things, which means, well, I'm 5'8", I'm not a little lady. And so there was all this hunching and trying to, squish myself, as opposed to, wow, I'm 5'8", I'm pretty statuesque, and look at me, world.
Yes. So I'm 5'10", and
All right.
my daughter's 6 feet.
Oh my
And
God.
and my mom is tiny, teeny tiny. Until my daughter passed me, I was actually the tallest woman on both sides of my family. So I definitely know the experience of like standing
Yes.
out just due to your being
Yes.
head above your peers.
Yes.
And something that was very funny, I think you might resonate with this. I was getting some energy work sessions from a really wonderful healer in Whitehorse. And I don't know how it came up, but she just started laughing at me because um, I I was maybe talking about kind of shrinking or not wanting attention, not wanting to be noticed, and she's kind of gestures at me and she says, "But you chose this body."
Yes. Yes. That's a game changer, is it not?
Yeah, to think, well, I didn't just show up in this body, in this family, in this culture, the dimensions and size that I am by chance. Some part of my soul chose me. I think it is a game changer, especially for women and these tendencies to shrink, to try to be ladylike, to be quieter. But it's, for me, it was a game changer to claim some sovereignty for, and it's never bothered me that I'm tall, but I've definitely had a dynamic of feeling like attention is dangerous, or feeling flustered with attention, and then to kind of reclaim my whole self, and the fact that I do draw attention through my height and other factors, as owning it as my soul wanting me to be in this body is a huge game changer, right?
Yes. Recently, I've said, what if my outpicturing is exactly who I'm supposed to be here? What I've chosen to manifest as. Oh my, you know, that's brilliance, brilliance. And that means then I have permission to be all of me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this feels like a really good note to end our conversation on. And so, yeah, so what I'd love to invite you to do for our listeners who've been enchanted with your perspective and your ease and your wisdom, is to have you just share a little bit about what you do in the world and how they can find you online.
Sure. I have a website. It's preachitsister.com. And it's about looking at how do we shift our consciousness, shift our beliefs, giving people permission to do so in a loving and gentle way. The whole thing is about knowing that the beliefs that we have, not all of them are our own. You know, we've been conditioned from the time that we are able to move around on this planet of what's morally correct or wrong, what's up, what's down, what's light, what's dark. And now as adults, if we really want to, we can assess whose belief system do we have running us around the planet. Some of them will choose and will say, yes, I want to keep this one. This is important to me. And others, we have the choice to say, you know what, this is a crazy one. I think this came from my grandmother. And I can make that decision today to say, no, that's not my belief. I choose not to have that. So that really was the impetus for my book, which is called or entitled Turning Your Why into Why Not. And it's about giving ourselves permission to be human and making choices in a way that's loving, that's supportive, that's non-judgmental. I also do guest speaking at different communities when I'm invited to, and I go about the world having these conversations with people who are willing to engage with me.
Mm-hmm. And you're on the road, so if anyone's listening and wants to
Yes,
reach out, maybe you'll be in their vicinity.
I could be in a neighborhood by them.
That's so fun. Thank you so much, Sheree.
Thank you, Janelle. I really had a great time.
Thank you for joining me today on the Personal Mythmaking Podcast. If this conversation resonated, if you know someone who'd love it, please do share it with your friends, family, clients, colleagues. And if you like this podcast, please support it by writing a review on the iTunes podcast app. The more reviews are posted, the easier it is for people searching for this kind of conversation to find it. You'll also find links to my guest and myself in the show notes at janellehardy.com/podcast. Finally, if you'd like to start your own healing and memoir writing journey with me, in a process that honors body-based healing and learning and integrates ancient tales like fairy tale and myth into the writing process, head on over to personalmythmaking.com. I'll meet you there.